Okay, so let's move into our graded task for this week. So this week, we're actually going to do part 2 of the querying. You did part 1 last week. You took notes. You didn't actually write queries. So we're actually going to write queries this week. And when we're writing queries, we're going to learn a new workflow that you will then add to your existing workflows of the Git workflows. Okay, so and I will go over today how this is going to work. And you will complete, like I said, for 50 points here, the part 2. So here's the link to the file. I already have it open. So here's the file we'll go over in a minute. And then I also have my GitHub user interface, right? Not my code space, but where we left off after the video you just watched. Now this is that same GitHub user interface, and I'm going to go ahead and start my code space. Now at this point, my tab now becomes my code space. And again, I kind of like to give it a different color so it looks a little different. All right, so now you could set this up however you want. I like to have it here. Now you could also split this to where you have this as part of the screen. Part of this would depend on your particular setup, and I talked a little about setup in week 1, so you get to find really what works best for you here. Okay. Now, if you don't by default have, and you can see I don't actually start typing, right? If you start typing, that goes away. I am going to figure out how to make that go away as well. But for today, have a terminal. And if you didn't see me do it on the last one, you click these little 3 lines and you go to terminal and you start a new terminal. And by default, and this is something you're going to learn today, the terminal is going to be in what's called a bash interface. Okay, that just means the type of commands that you do. This is a fairly common thing. If you're actually running locally on Windows, you may have PowerShell, but in general, we use bash just for running commands, but you're actually going to learn how to run SQLite today, which is pretty cool, I think. All right, so again, just kind of getting us oriented. And now if I come in here, we do have that querying subdirectory, that folder that we're going to be working in today. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the instruction. So in this case, here's the link to the video you're going to end up working through in a few minutes. We'll go over that. But first, we're going to do a little bit of setup. And actually, we're going to copy the database file that you're going to be using for the work that you need to do today. Okay. So, but first in the setup, it says from your CodeSpace terminal, make sure your current directory is in the querying folder, and then copy and paste this terminal. And boy, this couldn't be more important to be very precise and deliberate here. So I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to hit copy. Right, so this command is a curl command. And again, once I hit copy, it's in the computer's memory. I just highlight it again to show I'm using it. But it's basically saying, hey, go out, right, and give me the database file from this location and copy it into wherever my current directory is. So I'm going to show you how to do this in your code space, because very often in our work, we're acquiring a new database. Okay, we actually use long lists for a couple of weeks, but for future use, you'll see something like this as well. Okay, so we come over here. So now notice right now, a couple things is that and matter of fact, if I happen to close my terminal and come back over here and go to terminal, when you do a new terminal by default, notice I now have 2 of them, it goes to that base repo. And we call that the root often of your of the folder or the repo that you're working in. But for this work, we actually want to be in querying. And I showed you last time, but I'm going to show you a different way today. I actually do it, which is I do a command, which is CD, and I type Q, and then I hit tab. And what that does is it's a smart autofill. And what it does is it looks at all the folders in my root, and it says, hey, if I look for something that starts with Q and I just hit Q tab, then that will see if it finds 2 things, it may give me a list, but because there's only 1 folder with that, it does, and it moves my current, and we call this PWD, or my current working folder, as that querying subdirectory, or again, depending if you like to call it a folder or a subdirectory. Now the other thing, because I'm in Bash, I can just type clear here to clear out. And I often like to do that because it's like I just start seeing too much. Now the thing I showed you how to do was actually open an integrated terminal. That is another way to do it, but it's just kind of for workflow and just for your knowledge. And notice how now that I've opened another one, I start to get a couple over here. So one of the things you can also do is you can actually also open, and we will end up opening 2 terminals today. But for now, I'm just going to show you how to hit the trash can to actually, start or trash or stop the ones we already had. And then notice how now I have none, right? So I can just hit plus and it'll bring back, actually it brought back 2. That's interesting. Okay. All right, so in Bash here, right, now that, and I took a few steps, but now we still have this copied, and if you didn't do it, you go get it. Making sure, now notice how when I open the new one, and that's why, good, I'm glad I saw this. Notice how this is actually a new one, and I guess I just didn't see it, but this Bash session actually is in the querying folder. So if you did like I did and you opened a new one, so you would then need to, let me click into here, CDQ tab, and that would then make both of my Bash sessions, so these are just sessions that are running in that querying folder, okay? And this is not a bad way to start because of what we're going to end up doing. Okay, so now that we're here, I'm actually going to paste. Now look what happens here, and this can happen for a variety of reasons, because maybe when you pasted one time, you got a pop-up and you didn't hit OK to it. I actually think that happened to me. And so what it says is, I'm unable to read your clipboard. And make sure you've granted access. You can hit retry and it's like, oh, I still can't do it. And if you come up here to your browser window, I'm going to say I recommend Chrome for this. If you're using other browsers, just look for this icon because it may be there. But notice there's this little line on, and actually it's the clipboard. So if I click here and I'm going to say allow from this site, which is my code space, cool, right? So now let's try it again because I'm pasting that in, and now I can actually paste it. And what this is going to do is in my querying subdirectory, it's going to run that command and it's going to bring in that file, that database file that we're going to need for this work, okay? And so when you start watching Carter's lectures at the point you're going to start today, he's actually not going to go through that. And that's why when we're doing our work, we have to kind of lay upon the work that you're doing following Carter. We have to do some pre-work. All right, so now that we're in here, cool. So it shows us how quickly it came in, shows us how big the file was that came in. So I'm just like, okay, cool. So I'm just going to hit clear here just to get rid of it. So now I know, and I'm going to get rid of this file just to kind of clean up my interface. I now have this database file. It's untracked. We'll learn later how to actually not have these done version control. I'll teach you that later. But I'm going to come back here. Okay, so now that I have that, I've done this step. So now we're going to create another file in that querying subdirectory. Okay, so in that same subdirectory, it's called P2. So part2-q.sql is actually an SQL file. Okay, now you're going to see how we write queries in this class next, but let's just go ahead now in your code space, making sure we're still in here. Now we could actually create folders on the command line, but it's pretty much easier here now that I have that querying is I'm going to hit this plus on the file. Make sure you're not on the folder, you're actually creating a file, and you do p2-q.sql. Now, notice the icon. The icon actually says, I recognize this file as an SQL file. Okay, so when we say .sql, that means there's going to be queries in this file. Now, for our purposes, in addition to our queries that you'll see how I'll have you write them in a minute, there's actually going to be some other commands that you're going to learn in the last part of this week's attendance. Okay, so now we have this new file. Okay. So I'm going to come back over here, right? And I'm going to now, right, copy this code. Now, you can either do one of two things. You could just select this code like this. But when I put this code in what we call a markdown file. These are things you're going to end up learning. There's actually a little copy over here. So you can do it either way. You can either select, right, do it that way, or just if I was going to be like, oh no, just copy it. All right. Now we're going to talk about and we're going to learn about what this file is doing in a minute. But for now, we're just going to paste it in there. It's like, okay, cool. Right? And you'll be like, Rio, why is all this in here? Well, because we need it. Because when you're writing queries, and you'll learn this very soon, matter of fact, in a few minutes, you actually have to prove. So this is what we call your proof of work file, okay? Because when you write queries, you actually have to prove that they work, okay? Not just because this is a way you prove, you show your work by not just writing queries that create the correct output, but actually showing them in a file. And this is what this code is going to end up doing. Let me give you just a quick overview. So it's going to do something called set mode box. It's going to output whatever is in this file to this text file. That's what cat does, is it sends it there. It's going to actually print a little message, first query, right? And this is what's going to show up in the file. Now these are just comments inside of this file. And then here's the actual query. This is what you're going to learn with Carter this week. Okay, and then after each commit, comment out the query. Now I'll show you this also when we start actually looking at the work that you're doing. And I included just a quick query here. Okay, and I probably shouldn't have, because what I'm about to show you is how I want you to approach this. Okay, so now that we have that, right? We're going to do one other thing, and then we're actually going to say setup ready. We're actually going to do a commit here, right? So because what you're going to end up doing here is sometimes you're going to be writing queries. Matter of fact, in the first one, you're actually going to be writing queries. You're going to be writing 3 of them. Okay, and then on the second one, you're going to be taking notes. So you're going to be working in the README file. So for this one, and then in the third one, right? So again, well, comment out previous ones. You'll see what I mean by that in a minute. I tell you where to pick up. You're going to learn some more SQL. You're going to write 2 queries here, and then you'll do that proof of work. So I'm just giving you kind of the lay of the land of what you're going to end up doing. So let's come back here. Okay, so now that we're here, let's do this part of what we wanted to do. Okay, so we're going to add a heading, querying part 2. So now I'm going to open up that README file. I'm going to go to the end, right? And I'm going to say, in this case, a heading 1. I'm going to say week 2. Is that what I wanted? Week 2, querying part 2. And this is fairly common, right? That you'll actually, because you're taking notes over here, I'll scroll up to show you this, right? So now that we have that, now we're ready to do a commit, right? So when I grade your work, I'm going to see, did you create the file, right? Did you add the heading? And that's what I'll look for. So now let's actually do this commit. It says setup ready. Okay, so in this folder, we'll do git add, and in this case, we can do star. So this is anything I've done. So in this case, we have a modification, we have an untracked file, and an untracked database file. Okay, so because this file had already been created, we just modified it, but these were untracked because we created them. But when I do star, it picks up all of that. Okay, it says add everything that you have, whether it's modified or new, and now we're going to do git commit. We're going to say setup ready. Now notice what happened. All those went away because now we have this stage. Now we haven't pushed it yet, and you don't really have to push yet. You can if you just want to. If it's just like, you know what, I want to make sure it's over on GitHub, you can do that. But it won't be until the very end when you actually post your, actually for this one you don't have to post your commit history. It will actually be for something else. But in general, just understand that. Okay, so now, before we jump into the actual work part of this, let's actually now learn how to use this query file, okay? And for this purposes, let's just actually get rid of that query, okay? For now, just so you'll see, and notice how it's modified. That's okay. So I'm going to hit clear here. Now, where we write queries for this class, and this is what you'll see Carter do, so this is where we're getting to the place where actually you're now closer to the point of starting with Carter and actually walking through, watching the video and actually coding along. So now notice I have these two subdirectories, or two sessions of bash. But one of these sessions is actually going to be running SQLite. So this is the application, the DBMS. You're going to learn that term pretty soon. Basically, the system, the app. In this case, we're going to call it a subsystem in the way that we're going to use it because it's going to run as a subsystem. It's not really a subsystem, but I don't want to get too much jargon right now. But here's what you're going to do. You're actually going to run SQLite 3. So when you do that command, it's actually going to run SQLite 3, but if we don't give it a database reference, when we get into the system, we won't be able to do anything because we don't have a database reference. We won't be able to write queries. So I actually need to specify long list, in this case, long list.db. Remember the database name right here. Cool. So when I hit enter, a couple things happen. I get a prompt showing me I'm in SQLite 3, awesome, but also notice on my sessions, one of my sessions, and if I click back, is still on bash, right? And then one of them is in SQLite 3, and this is what we're going to need, because in order to do your proof of work, to run this in a minute, we're going to need to be in bash, and in order to write the queries, we need to be in SQLite 3. Okay, so when you're writing queries, you're always doing a select first. Now what you select is what you're going to end up learning. You would maybe select a columns, more than one, okay? And you might go, well, wait a minute, how do I know these things? Well, this is what you get to know over time, and Carter starts to, and we start in our work to learn more about this, but for today, we kind of just do star. In other words, star says, show me everything in a table inside of this database. And this is where it can be a little strange when you first start, because the table name, because in the future we'll have more than one table, but for today we only have one, happens to be the same name as the database. In the future that may not be true. Okay, so we're going to say select star, and in this case from. Now when I'm capitalizing things here, there's actually a reason. You will learn this in the lecture. So it's going to say select everything from quotes long list. And this is a table name and this is a database name. They can be different, but happens to be the same. Now, what I want to do is terminate this line. If I don't use that semicolon and I hit this, I'll get this little output, and you might go, oh my God, what happened? All you have to do is place a semicolon there and then it runs. So it's just good practice, and when we end up actually running proof of work in a minute, you'll see we still include them in here, and you might go, what are you talking about, Rio? I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so notice all this content. Holy mac, look at all this content. It's basically showing, not basically, it is showing you everything in this. Now we'll learn more about what these mean, what these column names, and that's actually a column, but it's just outputting it. But just see it a little clearer. You're going to do something you saw in this file. Now you could just copy and paste it, but I like to actually do .mode box. Okay, nothing happened here, but if I actually want to run the query again, I could type it, which by the way, when you're first starting, not a bad idea, okay? Because what it does from long list, okay, semicolon. So now I'm going to run the query again. I'm going to hit enter, and now, and I'm going to back up, I'm going to change my resolution a little bit. So notice what happens. Here's all the output, but now it's in a table format. Its output's got a box around it, and it just makes it easier to read. Now I'm going to zoom back in just because it's a little easier to read here. So now I have a query that I know, and you'll see this, you'll like write queries along with Carter. And then when you get the correct output, right, again, coming back to here on this first one, you're going to end up writing 3 queries, okay? And then you're going to run your proof of work, okay? So we're in this first part, starting here, you're actually not going to take notes. All you have to do is write queries. So in this case, right, I'm actually going to show you something that I want you to do. Notice where it says print here, right? So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to paste that here. I'm going to say first query. Okay, now I don't know. I think this actually might be his first query, and it's the query we just wrote. Now, I actually did stick something I didn't show you, and I want to tell you about this. You know, when you're first learning, it's good to just type because you get muscle memory. But over time, sometimes you want to actually say, hey, bring back that thing I just wrote. And I'm hitting up arrow here and it's cycling through. And if I hit down arrow, then it moves me through all the commands that I did. Because at this point, I know my query works because A, I have no error on it. Now, you might go, well, how would I know what an error is? But let's say you happen to do this. Select from long list. And you may already see, based on having just what you saw before, it's like, oh, that's a syntax error. That's not a correct query because I forgot to tell it what I wanted to select. Okay, select star everything from long list. Remember, table name, not database name. Cool, that worked, right? So I know that query, if I up arrow, is actually the correct query. Then I would come over here. I would select it, and now I would paste it. Oh, didn't I put that there? Oh, I'll do it in a minute. Let's do it now. Okay, so I'm actually going to take this. I'm going to hit X. This is your first query. Okay, cool. All right, so now we have written our query on the command line. We have created a proof of work, right? And we've copied what we know is the working query, the correct query syntax, right? So this is the syntax you're learning in this class into our query file. So now we're going to actually run this file, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute, and the output, instead of coming down to the terminal, is actually going to go to a file that I will check because you're going to be writing multiple queries, okay, for the code along, when you're code along with Carter, to show me that when you wrote queries, they were actually correct and outputted the correct content. So here's what we're going to do. First thing I'm going to do over here, and remember how I was typing clear when I was over at Bash? I was typing clear to get rid of stuff. When you're on SQL, you actually have to do, and there's a command, keyboard shortcut, but I don't remember it, .shell clear, if you want to clear it. And that just clears it to where I'm like, okay, I got everything I need. Now I need to run my proof of work. Okay, so I'm going to come back here. And now I'm going to go to the very bottom of this SQL file, okay, this P2. And I'm going to copy this. Notice this looks somewhat familiar because SQLite3 database is actually what the command we use to get into this. Matter of fact, let me just show you. I think it's actually Control D got me out. And if I wanted to up arrow here, I actually could run that again. So notice, and I did that a little quickly, but notice how now that brought me back into the SQL command, or the SQL prompt, which means I'm in the system. So now I'm going to copy that whole thing. And now I'm going to run it from Bash. And this will be a new way of doing things because now I'm going to paste. Let me actually just paste this. And so what this is going to do, and this is important, run this from the bash, okay? Run this from the bash terminal, not from the SQLite, because what this is going to do, it's actually going to do part of what we've already done here, but it's also going to run this SQL file that has all of this other content that we need, that you need to show me you did the work, okay? So in this case, let's actually hit down here, enter. And if that worked correctly, you should see a new file. And if you come over here, you actually see and open it up, you see that that's the print, right? So print here, right? And then you see the actual output that is much easier to read. And notice this, now we have these column names that you're going to learn about in Carter's lecture that you're going to go through. And that's cool. Right, so that's what's really great about what you're going to do here. So the process is the following. Okay, so you write queries on the SQLite subsystem, the terminal that is the SQLite system. You write queries here. When they work, right? You then copy them into this file and you'll end up having multiples. Like you'll end up, matter of fact, we're going to do another one. This may be ones you do with Carter, which is fine. Probably have you get rid of just the ones we're playing with. Let's just do print, and you could copy this. You could copy that one in here. But now let's do a second one. Let's actually say, right, second query. So if I came down here, now that I know a little about this table, I could say, oh, title. What if I only wanted the title of the book or the author, right? So I want to have more, I want to narrow my view. So let's say select, and again, capitalization is important. And now I'm putting quotes around the column. Let's say from, right? Okay, long list. So now instead of doing everything, and again, I'm not doing a proof of work, I'm not affecting my proof of work file, I'm only doing a query to see if I have the right syntax here. And now I see, oh, yeah, I do. But because I only have one column, I'm not getting that nice table, which is totally fine, right? You're going to end up learning this too. Like I could up arrow here, and I could come over here, and I could say also, how about showing me the title, okay? So I'm saying select these two columns from this table. Do this. Oh yeah, I must have gotten out. Oh, I did. Oh, that's right. I dropped out a minute ago when I got out of the SQLi subsystem to show you this, right? So in this case, I do .mode box. And the only reason I'm doing it in this terminal is just so you can see the output. I'm going to up arrow again. And now I get that nice looking output, just at least in my terminal. But remember, when we run this file, it actually does that for us, which is cool, right? So now let's take this. There we go. Okay. And again, you could just come over here and write it. Now, if you did that when you first start, the chances are not nothing that you might do a typo here. So that's why I like to copy them into my SQL file, right? And now you're going to say, hey, I have a proof of work to do now, right? So I'm going to show Rio that this actual query worked as well. Now, this is going to be different when you end up getting to writing 3 queries at one time and then doing the proof of work, okay? What I'm showing you is only, I wrote 1 and then I did the proof of work, but think of what would happen now if I ran my proof of work right now. What would show up in my proof of work file, okay? Just take a guess. Just take, in your mind, what would happen right now. And we're going to do this when I run the proof of work now. And I'm just going to up arrow. Okay, so just have it in your mind. Okay, and now let's go look at it. Okay, so what happened? Well, I got the first query, but then I got the first query again, and I got the second query. And that's because, right, in this case, because I had run the proof of work for this one, I got the output of this one, but I then also got, when I ran it the second time, I got the output from this one and the output from this one. So when I say, when you're writing this, have 3 queries, you don't do the proof of work until you're done, okay, with those 3 queries and that you have them correct. Let me show you what that is. So in this case, right, I'm going to do this. Now, what I'm about to show you is kind of one of those things you can do to kind of fix something, but the more queries you're writing, this gets a little more challenging because you also have commits, right? But I'm just showing you for purposes of understanding here, I'm going to delete that proof of work file because I know that based on the way that I ran it, right, and I'm just deleting it. Now, could you go in and delete the file? I think so, but I think for this purposes, I'm just going to show you here. And now I'm going to run it again. Okay, recreates that file, and now I get first, and then I get second. So I get the correct output for what I need. So when you're doing this first one, you'll end up having 3 queries, okay? Which, by the way, in this, you could start thinking about being more descriptive. Now for this first one, I'm not going to be too crazy here. But the last thing I'll leave you with before we actually go and have you start working on this, right? is actually the part here where it talks comment out queries, and actually it should say that as well. Oh, actually it could say this one in here, but let's come back here. Okay. Okay, I know it's a lot, so just take a breath, right? Because I'm actually trying to be more thorough than I've been in the past, because this is helping plug some of the concept holes that I noticed with students from prior semesters. So one of the things I say is after every commit, comment out the queries written, right? So let's say you were here, right, and you finished these 3 queries. And then you'll actually do a commit that you will do here. I'm actually going to have you delete the work we've done here just because we're playing around. But notice remember I said on the second one you're only taking notes, and that's where you'll actually go into your README file, right? And you'll take some notes in here. Okay, so for your second one, there's no SQL. There is a styling thing that I introduced slightly today. Okay. So in this case, I just want to show you where it says comment out previous queries, okay? Because you're going to end up writing some more queries here, and I don't want, when you do your proof of work here, I don't want it to include the queries from above. So how do you do that? You do this. You come over to your SQL file. I'm going to click both of these, and I'm going to hit Command // or if you're on Windows, Windows // okay? So now what that does is now that there's no queries that are actually in the SQL file, meaning these are commented out, if I ran this command again right here, then nothing would update to this because there's no queries. Okay, I just want to show you that. Okay, so that's hopefully going to help you get through this. So again, for this first one, you're going to end up writing 3 queries. So let's, for now, just to make our lives a little easier, let's go ahead and delete that. Okay. Actually, sorry, let's do this. I'm going to undo this. I'm actually going to leave the print there. Okay. All right, so we'll do that. And then we'll also, for this point, delete this. And you're welcome to, before you actually start doing the first colon here, is to play around a little bit and then reset that. That's actually not a bad idea as well, okay? And because we're basically back at that state that we started from before, by the way, this actually just means there's extra lines in here. That's all that means from your version control stuff, right? So remember, right, this is where you're going to write your queries inside of here. Okay, I'm not going to make you do another commit because we actually did a commit here, but let me just finish this going over this, right? So what you're going to end up doing now that you know how CodeSpace works as far as your queries, you've now learned about how to start different, multiple sessions. You've learned about how to start the SQLite system, right? So again, if I did Command D, it drops me out. If I use the up arrow, I run the SQLite 3 system again. Right? I've learned that I write queries on the command line, make sure they work, make sure they output what matches with what I see Carter doing, right? And then when I have the correct query, then I copy and paste it into here. And then when when it's the correct one and I'm ready, when you see in my instruction, complete the proof of work file, that means you go over to your command, you go over to your bash, you copy this, and then you're ready to paste that, or if you've already done it, right, up arrow or just paste it in there. And remember, if you run into any issues where you can't, come up to your command, your address bar and do that. Okay, so that gives you just a quick overview. I know this was a little longer, but trust me, having these things in place is going to make this next part much easier. All right. No commits required here because what you'll end up, matter of fact, let me just complete this by saying it says complete instructions in Canvas. Well, what you have to do is when I grade your work, there's nothing for you to submit like you did in week 1. I will just go look at your commit history. So I will look, did you do this? Did you do this one? And did you do this commit? And does it have the associated SQL and proof of work? That's what I will look for because in this case, advice, and this is what I say. You do not need to submit anything for this, right? Just know I review your commits and your code and see if you got it, right? And then you can reply to the discussion with anything that you encountered. But the last thing we're going to end up doing is learning more about this file that you've now been introduced to, okay? So again, just complete this work and now you'll move on to the last step in your attendance.